Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video we have a tropical disturbance to talk about, and also we're going to talk about our new tropical storm in the Atlantic too. Very interesting stuff coming up. Now before I get started with this video though, I would ask that you do subscribe if you do like weather related content, and also make sure to share this video with your friends, family, and social media. I'd also like to invite you to join our very exciting Discord servers and Facebook groups down below. For today's comment of the day, I want to know, what is your favorite song that mentions something about weather? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Alright, now let's get into this video. We're taking a look at our satellite imagery here. This is where our disturbance is located, right there on the panhandle of Florida, and if you live there, you're probably feeling some scattered or isolated thunderstorms coming on shore, and that's indicated by these areas of little bitty white clouds. Those are some pretty tall clouds and some pretty tall thunderstorms that are going to move onshore to the Florida panhandle here. Alright, now here's the actual location of our low pressure system here, as you can see. So it's right on the shoreline there of the panhandle of Florida, right where that L is located there. So that is where our low pressure system is located. And what it's going to do is it's going to head north and then head east, and it's going to move through Georgia and South Carolina and then move offshore of South Carolina, or maybe very far southern North Carolina, and then head back up the coast from that point, bringing some impacts along the East Coast. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on, and we're going to talk more about where this one's going to head. We're going to take a look at what NOAA has to say. We're also going to take a look at Tropical Storm Edouard. Alright, and here we are taking a look at that 5-day graphical tropical weather outlook here from NOAA. And our orange X there, that's going to head again offshore of South Carolina and North Carolina, and then northward up the coast from that point. Is in that orange region, but there's our tropical storm Edouard right there. Let's talk about that just briefly. So we already have another tropical storm here. We're already on our 5th tropical storm, I believe. So let's go ahead and take a look at NOAA's cone forecast here. And this is the reason I didn't make a video dedicated just to this storm. It's not really going to hit anywhere. So it is our 5th tropical storm, but it's not going to hit any land. So really the impacts from this one are extremely minor, but it does tack on to our number of tropical storms so far this year. Let's focus back on our disturbance that will impact land, and here we go. We have a 40% chance of this one developing into a tropical depression within the next 5 days. And as you can see, it is located again over the panhandle of Florida. It's going to move through Georgia, bringing some thunderstorms and wind, and then through South Carolina and offshore there, right near the borders of North Carolina and South Carolina. And then it's going to head north from that point. I think we could see some moderate to major impacts for the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and then also New Jersey, Long Island, possibly New York City, and possibly New England as well could also feel some moderate to major impacts. We're going to take a look at some model guidance later on in the video, taking a look at simulated radar, things like that, and talk a little bit more about those things. But what we're going to do is we're going to move on, and what we're going to take a look at is our European model probability of tropical depression and probability of tropical storm. Just talk about where we could see this one go and how far we could see it develop. Alright, and here we are taking a look at that tropical depression probabilities. And as you can see, our deepest shade is that yellow there, that yellowish shade, and that's where we have anywhere from 50 to 60% chance of seeing this one become a tropical storm. So the European model right now has a moderate to high chance of us seeing this one become a tropical depression. I think there's more chance than not that it does become a tropical depression. But let's move on and take a look at the tropical storm probabilities, and you can see that the probabilities are quite low at this point on our European model. There is an area of purple, and it's actually as it gets further north offshore of New England, according to the European model, because some do not have it offshore, some have it hitting. We'll talk more about that later on. But there's only a 10 to 20% chance here, so a low chance of tropical storm status, but it would be later on in the storm's track according to this model. Alright, let's go ahead and move on and take a look at our spaghetti model guidance, and this is where we just see each individual model has its own line. And as you can see, only a few models are on this map because only a few have picked up on it so far. Over the coming days, we will see more and more and more models, and I will be making more updates on this storm. This is probably going to be the biggest topic for at least the earlier portion of this week. You can see a lot of models have it heading offshore pretty far, but a lot of them have it skirting along the coast there, and that would be the more impactful track, as we would see heavy rainfall and some light winds for a lot of these regions here if we were to see that type of a storm track. Now let's look at that intensity guidance, and this is the same story except it shows us how strong the storm will get. As you can see, we're actually quite close to tropical storm status as it is right now. But a lot of the models have it weakening from this point as it hits land, obviously, and then kind of resurging in about 3 days or 4 days here over the next 72 to 100 hours. They have it kind of heading closer to tropical storm status. We do have a couple models that do show it in tropical storm status, but I think the majority here have it just below tropical storm status when it's all said and done. This is another thing where we're just going to have to wait and see how this one redevelops once it gets offshore of the Carolinas. I don't think we're going to get an answer to this until this one is back in the Atlantic Ocean. But the potential is actually quite moderate. I think we could see a tropical storm from this one. I'm not thinking that it's 0 to 10% chance. I think it's far more likely that it's a 20 to 50% chance that we see this one become a tropical storm with how this year has gone in the tropics so far. So what we're going to do is we're going to move on and take a look at some of that model guidance. We're going to take a look at our vorticity. We're also going to take a look at the simulated radar on multiple models. Just take a look at where each of them has it tracking. All right, and we're taking a look at our NAM model, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our cyclonic vorticity, and really this just shows us rotation up in the atmosphere here. And first things first, you don't see a lot going on except for near the Panhandle of Florida. You can see the tops of those big thunderstorms that we saw out there on our satellite imagery. Let's move forward, and this is going to be by July 7th, which is tomorrow, and you can see most of that rotation is going to be offshore, or actually inland there in South Carolina and North Carolina. And now let's go ahead and take it to the next day after that, Wednesday, July 8th. And you can see a lot of that energy is moving offshore of North Carolina and South Carolina. A lot of it is onshore of North Carolina, though, as well. And that's going to be our potential impacts there that are onshore by that point. All right, now here's our NAM 12KM model. We had to kind of downgrade to a lower resolution model here as time moves on. This is by Thursday afternoon, July 9th. And again, a lot of that energy is off the southeast coast. We can see a lot of it heading into eastern Virginia, northeastern North Carolina, but most of it is offshore there of South Carolina and North Carolina. It's going to be very, very interesting to see where all of that lines up and what kind of impacts we see for the East Coast. Now, for the very end of this video, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the models and where they see a lot of that precipitation going, because that could be our biggest impacts from this one. So we're going to take a look at our GFS model, our Canadian model, and also our GFS parallel, which is not known for being a good model at all, but we're going to take a look at it anyway, and then our icon model. Then we have our direct weather graphical outlook for this tropical disturbance for the next 7 days forecast, which is going to tell a lot about where we're expecting it to go, as well as the impacts that we could see for a lot of regions. All right, and here we are taking a look at the GFS model, and as you can see, by Thursday morning at about 2 a.m., it has a lot of that precipitation onshore for the Outer Banks there. Very heavy precipitation and probably a lot of rainfall is going to occur for those regions if this was to play out the way this model thinks it will. Let's go ahead and move on. Take a look at where that has it end up going. And as you can see, we see Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, as well as Cape Cod gets a lot of those yellows and reds as well. So the heavier precipitation ends up making its way to coastal regions of New England there. Let's take a look at what that Canadian model has to say. And it actually has land impacts much earlier on for South Carolina and North Carolina. Down there where we have those reds and oranges there, heavier precipitation. It eventually also has it hitting the Outer Banks, just like the GFS showed. But as we can see here by Friday morning at about 8 a.m., take a look at that. The Jersey coast getting those really heavy areas of precipitation there. The center of low pressure is over the Delmarva actually on this frame. And it would eventually have that impacting New York City, Long Island as well, which would be extremely interesting if that was to occur. As you can see, as we take a look at our GFS parallel model, again, this model isn't very good, but I'm still going to show this. It also has it impacting the Jersey coast, New York City, and Long Island there as well. It actually has our low pressure system moving just onshore of New Jersey and areas like New York City as well. That would be extremely interesting if we saw that happen. But let's take a look at that icon model, which has been an up-and-coming model. This model has been doing a lot better as of recently, so I'm going to show it more often probably. And it has it well offshore of the East Coast. But this is kind of the outlier at this point because most of the models do have this one impacting the East Coast, up and down the East Coast actually. So the icon is the only one that shows this one well offshore of the East Coast here. Now here's our official forecast map for this one, and looking at it now, I think I could have gone a little bit further west with it. I think that this will likely be on the western edge of what I'm showing here, the northern and western edge of this map that I'm showing here. But I want to draw your attention to the bottom right hand side of the screen here, where we see it's at 29.9 degrees north by 85.4 degrees west. It has 34 mile per hour winds, and it has a low pressure center of 1009 millibars. All right, now let's draw our attention back to the red area. You can see the low pressure system is located over the Florida Panhandle. It is going to move through Georgia and then possibly move offshore of South Carolina or North Carolina or both, and then possibly track over the Outer Banks or just offshore of the Outer Banks. And then I think it's going to move northward from that point. Again, outside of my cone, we did see a couple of the models showing it move over the Delmarva. I don't think it's likely at this point. I think it'll be a little bit offshore and potentially curve back and hit the Jersey coast, New York City, Long Island, or possibly be a bit offshore of those regions, and then possibly hit Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, Cape Cod, areas like that. But really, all possibilities are on the table at this point, and I think I'm going to have multiple updates for this storm in the coming days, so be on the lookout for those for sure. As we continue to get new information in, I will continue to give you guys the new information out. All right, now for today's comment of the day, I asked you guys, what is one thing you like about the fall, and what is one thing you dislike about the fall? And Kenneth Russ said, I love the crisp air and the changing colors of the leaves, as do I. And his dislike is, however, is that it feels like a perfect fall as far as it never feels like a perfect fall as far as temperatures. And I have to agree, it always seems too warm in September. October's a little warm, and then November just all of a sudden like winter mode, it feels like. So yeah, that's kind of how fall typically goes, in my opinion. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Again, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and social media. I will see you guys in the next video.